Hey, Marvel fans, this is Werewolf 2112 here with my first installment of Denizens of the Marvel Universe. A quick character bio and background of some known and some lesser known Marvel characters. Today's installment is on the X Men character Xorn. Now, Xorn first appeared in New X Men Annual 2001. He was a captive in a Chinese concentration camp for mutants. Um, he found out that he was about to be sold to the corrupt mutant John Sublime, and he thought rather than, spend his life in slavery, he would commit suicide by removing his helmet. Now, how you commit suicide by removing a helmet? Well, Zorn doesn't have your typical brain. Zorn has a white dwarf star for a brain, which allows him to create searing, blinding light. He can also reverse the polarity of his star to turn it into a black hole and end up, sucking everything in. Which I believe is what he was doing in order to be able to tamper with gravity and things like that. The X Men convinced him otherwise, and after a battle where they were injured by the Shi'ar Empire, they found out that Zorn has some healing properties, and they again tracked Zorn down, and he healed the X Men from the Nano Sentinel virus that they had encountered, and it even allowed Charles Xavier to walk. Um, they later put Zorn in charge of a special class in the X Men, where he was, a teacher to all the physical, physically deformed mutants, or social outcasts of the mutant world. And he really took a beating from his students. They constantly berated him with comments and teased him, but he really didn't seem to mind. All he cared about was trying to befriend the students and teach them and help them in their everyday life. Now, here's where the story gets a little confusing. You see, Zorn is by far the most confusing and convoluted character in the X Men story mythos ever. Mainly because of the story Planet X, which was an ingenious story written by Grant Morrison, where Zorn takes off his helmet and reveals himself to be none other than Magneto, the master of magnetism, who had infiltrated the X Men. He hadn't actually healed Xavier. He reparalyzes him. All he had done was fuse the nano sentinels to Xavier's spine, allowing him to walk. Uh, but he takes his special class of mutants and goes on a rampage, destroying all of Manhattan. And before he is stopped, he kills Jean Grey. And in retaliation, Wolverine goes into one of his trademark berserker rages and severs the better thinking part of Magneto from the rest of his body. Now, this really didn't go over too well with the bigwigs at Marvel, for two reasons. One, they actually liked the character of Zorn, and I can't blame him. I think he looks really cool. Two, Magneto ended up being dead, decapitated. There was no coming back from this. So they decide to retcon the whole story. When they do, it turns out that Zorn is actually one of a set of Chinese twins. Now, this Zorn, who impersonates Magneto, is Kuan Yin Zorn, and he was kept in a Chinese concentration camp, and actually fell under the influence of John Sublime, though the X Men didn't really know this. And supposedly John Sublime forced Kuan Yin to assume the identity of Magneto. However, they do not find this out until they go to recruit his brother Xorn, who was living in a monastery. And Xorn reveals to them that his brother was under the control of John Sublime, and also helps them in a fight against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants led by Exodus. Now, during this fight, uh, Shinzorn takes off his helmet and he sucks in, using his black hole that he has in his brain, he sucks in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants in order to stop their tyrannical rampage or whatever they're doing. And he goes back to his monastery to reflect on what his actions were and, do the Chinese honor type thing. Then House of M happens. And in House of M, mutants lose their powers as a result of the tamperings of the Scarlet Witch. When she realizes she can't make her father happy, she simply blurts out no more mutants and nearly annihilates the mutant race, leaving only a couple hundred to survive. Um, when this happens, Shinzorn loses his powers, but all these mutant energies combine and possess the body of a mutant in Canada and become the Collective. Now, the Collective goes to Genosha to try and find Magneto. The reason being is that Xorn has become the dominant personality of the Collective, and he gets to Genosha and finds Magneto and reveals to Magneto that the reason why Xorn chose to impersonate Magneto in the first place was because Magneto is a charismatic leader, and he is somebody that mutants would actually follow. So, having said that, that kind of retconned the whole John Sublime story, even. So, Marvel never did a good job of cleaning this character's background and origin up. Um, they took him from being a Benedict Arnold type character for the X Men into being two Chinese twins, one with a white dwarf star and one with a black hole for a brain. Now, Zorn, uh, aside from the effects of the star, he also has a sensitivity to energies. He can tell when someone is tampering with gravitational or magnetic forces. He can tell when there's been a death anywhere in his immediate vicinity. But all of that becomes all for naught when the Collective is thrown into the sun by Sentry, I believe it was, and is essentially killed off. And that's the end of Zorn. Though Shinzorn still lives, he's not a mutant anymore, so it's kind of a moot point. Um, Now, Zorn also appears in the Age of Apocalypse. Whenever they revisited that universe, they have a female Zorn, and that Zorn ends up being Paige Guthrie, who in the Age of Apocalypse Generation Next series was left behind enemy lines for dead, and as a way of getting revenge on Magneto and the X-Men for doing so, um, infiltrates the team and kidnaps Magneto's son, uh, leading to one of the best fight scenes, I think, in X-Men comics ever, where Magneto almost single-handedly wipes out the Guthrie clan. Um, but anyway, that kind of cemented Zorn's status as the mutant who infiltrates the X-Men and betrays them. Um, but anyway, that's it for this installment of Denizens of the Marvel Universe. That was a little history on Xorn. Actually, pretty much all the history on Xorn. The next installment will probably be on a personal favorite of mine, of the lesser known Marvel characters, Moon Knight. Um, until next time, Marvel fans, Excelsior!